So this will only be for about 10-15 minutes. Kind of late notice, so I'm not really expecting that many people, but if this loads, not sure what this is doing. Also, I'm going to be going over like my predictions for next week, even though I don't really trade off predictions. Alright, what is this doing? There we go. Damn it. Alright, perfect. So, last week was decent. We had the NFP, and I'm gonna actually point something out. So this day, I barely even traded. I didn't even look at NFP. I wasn't even awake because I was out the previous morning or whatever. But I did have this. Let me go to the 4 hour or maybe even the 3 hour. I did have this giant fair value gap marked on here. Like I knew we would probably bounce off it at some point. If you guys remember last NFP or 2 NFPs ago, we kind of, I don't know the exact date, but the last non-farm payroll, we had this giant knife, and then we just downtrended the whole day. And the difference between that NFP and this one is if you're ever in a news event and you ever are, if you're ever like at a high of a range or low of a range in a news event, and let's say you're at the higher of a range of a news event and the event is bearish, well, if there's giant fair value gaps that you created and we pumped up, well, you're not going to expect the news to just downtrend all day after the news comes. Why? Because we have giant fair value gaps. Look how like bullish this shift is. Okay. Same thing. Like if we were in a lower range and we got a big giant pop off the news, but let's say the low of the range was just like this giant knife. Well, why would you expect us to keep uptrending all day? So I know a couple of people who had options on Thursday overnight, and they had puts. We opened and they asked me, they're like, Ryan, should I sell my puts? And I'm like, well, I remember 2 NFPs ago, we downtrended the whole day, but I specifically told them, I said, look at the daily. We literally NFP, we just wicked into this fair value gap. So, and it was a BPR. Keep in mind, there's a volume imbalance here, which this volume imbalance technically wasn't filled because we got no candle close under here. So that kind of leads me into my predictions, which is why I'm still bearish. But we had this unfilled balance, and I told him, I go, well, 2 NFPs ago, we didn't have this giant daily fair value gap when we knifed on NFP. We literally just knifed, and we had nothing supporting us below. But this one, we had this giant daily fair value gap, so I told him, I was like, you should probably definitely scale half your puts, maybe see what happens. And in the beginning of the day, I told him, he kind of asked me around this time, okay? So I told him if we go above this, I go, definitely sell your puts. That probably means we're in an uptrend. So obviously you can see here, we have this energetic shift up. And yes, this is a very energetic market structure shift up. And we bounce off the 0.70, okay? So you can see, sorry, one second. And we bounce out the 0.70, right? It goes on the 1 minute actually. Let me just check. Yeah, it was on the 1 minute. Maybe it wasn't the setup. Okay. Nonetheless, we bounced off this 1 minute fair value. Oh yeah, it was on the 1 minute. I'm sorry, guys. So this swing low. See how this identified swing low. We ended up bouncing off the 0.700, 0.705, and honestly, if I got into this trade, and this was a fair value, like if I got into this trade, which I never did because I was unprepared that day, I may have been shaken out. I really can't tell if I would have been shaken out or not, but you can see we have this giant 10-point move up here, and we almost go back to break even, but it doesn't quite hit, and then the target ends up hitting. And I'll be honest, holding through a move like this is very, very hard psychology-wise. But the main idea I want to get across to you guys is whenever there's a news event, even though we're not supposed to play news events, you kind of got to look at the daily or and see what is below us or what is above us. Going into NFP, I didn't really have a bias. I knew there's a volume imbalance right there, which made me bearish, and I knew there was this daily fair value gap, right? But I also knew we had this giant daily fair value gap with a bunch of unfilled orders. So you have to think to yourself, why would we just downtrend all day from NFP, okay? Versus, like, right here, I think this was CPI, and we had this big fair value gap. We rejected this fair value gap, and if you look, discount was way down here. We had this volume imbalance right here, and this was a tiny fair value gap, but the whole CPI move was just, there's not really a major support because we had this giant daily fair value gap, and this wasn't really a strong shift. This was 1, 2. It took 4 candles for us to get up here. So instead of a giant shift up, we only got we got 4 candles. Versus in this scenario, this is just one giant massive candle over this high, okay? Which makes this candle way more bullish than any of these candles. And this is a really awkward fair value gap. It's like a fair value gap and a volume imbalance at the same time, so it's not really that supportive in my opinion. And then there's obviously no fair value gap right here as well. And if you look at the 0.705, there's no fair value gap there. So that's just something I like to keep in mind with news events. Like, let's say we just got CPI right now. I would definitely probably be bearish if we got CPI right now. Why? Because we're at this daily order block. We filled, okay, we rejected this fair order block. We filled this fair value gap. So now that this is filled, that leaves room for us to go down to this fair value gap. And you really don't want to play news events. And I'll just mark right here because this part is already filled. Yeah, you don't really want to play news events, but at the same time, like, it just helps your bias and helps the direction for the day, because I know a lot of people who held puts overnight for NFE, or a lot of people who shorted off open because they saw the giant dump. And I remember 2 NFEs ago that we just downtrended all day, but they got wrecked because they didn't look at the daily. We had this giant supporting candle, so there's no reason for us just to randomly fall through this. We're not just going to get a 200-point move off a non-farm payroll data that wasn't even half bad. So it's just something to kind of pay attention to. But yeah, so last week I don't think I alerted anything on Friday. Like I said, the only play I would have taken was this fair value gap play. It was a fair value gap in the 1 minute, and it also lined up with these down candles, which is an order block, as ICT says. So the start of this down move before the up move, these are the order blocks. Other than that, there was this, okay, and let's see, and we bounced off the 0.705 in this. I was done by that point though, and obviously right now, let's check what's going on right now. Right now, just consolidating for this week. What I'm thinking is, obviously I'm going to play what the market shows me, but what I'm thinking is, I think we go down, and the reason why I think that is because we just went over these equal highs in the 4 hour, okay? So here's your liquidity grab. So I will be looking for short ups, but that does not mean I will take a long set if I see one, okay? So what I have here is we went over these equal highs, which is your liquidity grab, and now I'm just going to wait till maybe a higher lows form. So maybe we get a low to here, maybe a bounce, and then I want to see a break of that low, then retracing the fair value gap. And I'll probably maybe look for short setups in the 5 minute. But so far, you guys can see there's no short setup available. Even though I think bias is bearish, well, there's no short setups available. Why? Because you can see higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. So why would you just randomly short with no structure breaks? You know what I mean? And I know some people rush in the trades and short without structure breaks. I do the same thing sometimes. It's really something you have to watch for. And just be careful of. Sometimes if I'm really itching to get in a trade, I'll wait. I'll try to beat confirmation without a structure break. So it's just really something to pay attention to. Let's see. So this was a short that I liked, and then someone asked me in my Discord, do you like this short? And I said no. So the thing about taking these really small fair value gaps is I've seen these get absolutely obliterated and blown through. So I feel, to me, that there isn't enough sell orders sitting in here yet just to stop a whole move like this. But like in this situation, we got to shift up. It wasn't really that energetic. But we had this unfilled fair value gap down here. So this is kind of a draw on liquidity. So yes, you could have taken this with the idea to sell here, but there's no reason really to take this to sell side because there was really no energetic market structure shift anywhere. The only energetic market structure shift, in my opinion, was this, where you can see we rejected here, but this was also inducement. So we reject here, we bounce off here, and you can see this fair value gap is respected. So we hit this fair value gap and we go almost to hit sell side. But again, this was kind of a not great day to trade. We ended up almost rejecting 0.75. I really wanted to short on this fair value gap. We never got it. But yeah, that was just kind of a midday. What I've been noticing is sometimes if London session is really good, meaning like 2 to 5 a.m., New York session can be very, very bad, okay? Like, this is 3:15 a.m., so this was London open right here as you guys can see. And you can clearly see, like, we got a clear break of structure shift. So right here, here's your break in structure. And at that time, we did have these equal lows. So, like, you can see that. But we also this unfilled fair value gap down here. And on the higher time frame, we're way in the premium. So really need to retrace. So in this session, we get the break. And then, boom, perfect fair value gap rejection right here. Even the order block rejection. And then we go hit sell side nicely. And then, again, another fair value gap rejection here. Go hit sell side nicely. So, like, that was a pretty clean session. And then, boom, what else do we have? We have the market structure shift back up after bouncing off this fair value gap. You can see we just bounced off this fair value gap. We have this energetic shift up with an order block and a tiny fair value gap. So the tiny fair value gap's right here. I'm sure there's one better one on the 1 minute there. And then we bounce off this 5-minute order block. So that was just three clean moves in London. And sometimes if I do notice that, I'm definitely careful when I trade this session because often clean London sessions usually lead to like New York session consolidating. If London session consolidates, I do look for a giant expansion with New York session. And I even saw a couple of people tweet last week. They said New York session is probably going to be bad. We had some nice moves in London, so it is what it is. And if you are from the U.S. like me, chances are you're not up for the London session. So let's say that does happen, then I would either not trade the morning session or I'll just try to scalp it the best I can or just wait till the afternoon session. But that's just something I'm still learning with experience. I never really studied the London or New York session until I started learning ICT, so it's definitely interesting. We got a clean bounce off this fair value gap. Wow. And another thing I like to do is see how we have these unfilled fair value gaps in here. I'll go and mark the old fair value gaps just to see what's up. So we have this one. We have this one. I think this is going to be a very good bounce spot if we do get down to it. We never actually quite tapped it. So this is an old fair value gap. I would definitely mark in your charts. This 4,000 zone. I can definitely see us getting a 10, 20 point sell-off off of that. Oops. And then down here, well, I don't really like this. Why? Yes, we could still bounce off it, but at this point in time, it's way under the 0.705 and the 0.79 even. So when we get back down here, this is kind of just a demand zone. So if you guys know supply and demand, it's kind of a demand zone. And I don't like scalping demand zones because entries off these are really hard. But like here, notice how this fair value gap right here. Notice how this fair value gap is from 4,005 to 3,992. Well, how do you know where to enter? Well, think about it. 4,000 is a giant psych level, so I'll try to get an entry around 4,000, 4,001. And I would make sure that it's being respected at first. I want to see consolidation around it first, and then maybe I'll enter. But if we're knifing and we have an energetic move down there, I'll just take my time, okay? And sometimes what I do is I'll wait for a move down to a zone, and like the 5 minute or 15 minute, whatever, I'll go to the 1 minute and look for another long setup off that zone. So in this example right here, pretend this was a fair value gap right here. Well, I'm not just going to guess and try to take this. I'll wait for an actual long setup. So we get the center jack move up. I'll wait for the fair value gap. Boom, here's a fair value gap, and then I'll long. And that's something very, very smart that you should start doing. I know if you guys know AM Trades on Twitter, he does this a lot, and I asked him about it. I was like, why wouldn't I text him one day, because I text him and I go, are you going to take this 15-minute fair value gap at open? And he goes, no, but if I see it respected, I'll look for a 1 minute setup off of it. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, we got a really nice 1 minute setup off of it. I saw we were respecting it. I was like, well, we're respecting it. Why would you not enter? And he goes, because we could still fail it, and I can still wait for 1 minute confirmation. He sees a 1 minute confirmation, and he entered. He slapped it, and it ended up being a really good trade. So that's something I'm trying to do a little better. But yeah, so that's probably going to end it here. Again, for next week, I am probably going to be bearish. This is very okay. So this is bullish in my opinion. Like, we hit discount, we bounced off this fair value gap, but I think this fair value gap is really going to give us trouble. This 4 hour fair value gap. Okay. I definitely think, like, you can see we hit equal highs right here, so I definitely think we can go down more. Again, I'll take long setups as I see them, but I'm going to be very, very cautious in longing way up here while we're in this 4 hour fair value gap. Because this whole thing could be just a giant liquidity grab, and retail could get wrecked going along here. So if we get something down here, down to this 4 hour gap, which is also a void, I would not be surprised. So I'm just being very, very careful along right now. But yeah, that's my bias for next week. Does anyone have any questions or anything? I do have to finish this quick, and I'm sorry for the late notice, but something came up. If you have any questions, just type in free chat. I'll give you like 30 seconds. Alright, well, that is it. I appreciate you guys who came. I did record this. And also, another thing, if you do watch my YouTube, I'm going to do a video on, first of all, I'm going to do part 2 on ICT setups you should not take and why they're bad setups. And I'm also going to do a setup on the 8:30 and midnight open. I've been watching that a lot, and T-Trades recently posted a video on it, I think today, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I have been using that more. Like, I'll use like the midnight as targets. And there's still like standard deviations I want to get good at. So ICT uses standard deviations for price targets sometimes. There's still a couple of ICT concepts I don't really utilize well enough. So I'll probably do some videos on that. But that's definitely what you can expect from me for this week. But yeah, other than that, thanks guys for coming. Ricks, good luck in your game. And peace out.